switch this on now.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say thank you, Andy, for making this contact with us. You're down on the south coast somewhere, and I'm just literally doing some kind of recording, but I appreciate, because you haven't been well, and I know you've got quite a lot to share within legal bounds without getting you too much into kind of any trouble. So what's been happening then?
Well, where do I start? Obviously I've had an awful lot to do over the last couple of months with the first sinking back in the end of June, and that, of course, that made me homeless because I couldn't stay aboard the boat. So eventually I moved into a flat, and I had to move a lot of stuff into the flat. There are some things I can't store in the flat, like paint and thinners and fuel and stuff like that. I've been trying to find a garage to store that stuff in, and I had absolutely no luck in doing that at the moment.
So do you want to very quickly just focus on actually what happened to the boat? Because I saw you in January time, and it looks like things were coming together for you.
Yeah, things were coming together. We've got the first sheets of plywood all cut and ready to fit up on the bow section to put the new deck in, and we decided to put 2 layers of inch-thick marine ply down. So we've got those. There was just needed a little bit of trimming to make them fit a little bit easier, and then obviously the edges needed sealing, and then we could glue them down and start painting and putting the crumbs, my mind's gone blank, putting the caulking in between the planks. But I got to I think it was the 1st of August or the 2nd of August, October, 1st or 2nd of October I was down there last. It was a Monday morning anyway. And we got things organised. The tarpaulin had torn again, so we organised some bits to repair the tarpaulin. We needed to put a new rail along the outside of the framework, because that was what caused it to tear. It got smashed. I then took the guy who was helping me to somewhere else, and that afternoon I was going to go back to the boat and do some more, and I started feeling really unwell. By about 9 o'clock at night, I was going downhill pretty fast. Do you have sugar in it? Yes, please. Sorry, I got someone in the background.
Will you tell your friend I can see him?
Oh, right.
He's on camera.
Okay. That's Eric, by the way, in the background.
Hello, Eric.
I had to stop any work at all. I got really bad dose of flu. And for the next 2 days, I had to stay in bed. And then
so let's come back to the boat, because this is the thing that people are asking about all over the world.
Well,
they saw the state of the boat, but of course things were tidied up a bit, and things were.
Well, it looked pretty untidy because of the torn tarpaulin. And I think it was on the Thursday, while I wasn't there, obviously I was laid up. I was feeling pretty ropey. The people in the boatyard decided not to approach me or phone me or get in touch with me in any way. They just decided to move the boat.
Really? That's very
they
kind
towed
of
it up to the end of the lake, put a 4.5 line on it, but then left it where the shore was actually on a transverse slope underneath the boat. And of course what you should do in those circumstances is put some what they call spring lines on, and then some breast lines on to stop the boat from rolling down the slope. And they didn't bother. And when the tide went out the following morning, the boat rolled over. Oh dear. And
it's quite a big, is it 15 to 20 foot roll, isn't it? In terms of water, in the tide coming in, or was it more than that?
Probably. Well, at that point, she was probably only just afloat on the high tide.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, they managed to stick her upright initially.
Yeah.
But of course, without the breast lines on, which would stop her from rolling, there's absolutely no way that when the next tide came in and went out during the night, that she wasn't going to roll down the slope.
Okay. So that caused, because I'm aware of the time in this end as well, unfortunately. I mean, if we can get 30 minutes out of this, would be fantastic. But as I say, I just really wanted to know what happened originally, and of course, with your health issues and stuff, you were taken in, and you tore a ligament in your arm or something.
Well, that was in between. The first sinking, they changed the pontoon on the side,
Yeah.
that was fine. But when they re-secured all the mooring lines, they tried to line up the replacement pontoon with the one behind it, so that they would try and pull it across. And they hadn't actually secured the pontoon properly. They just put a rope on it instead of putting a metal bracelet on the end.
Okay.
And they'd also pulled the bow of my boat across, which put it on top of the mudbank. Now they didn't move the aft end across onto the top of the mudbank. If they had done, they would probably have slid quite happily down the mudbank and been fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because they only did one end, when the tide went out, it ended up at an awkward angle, bow up, stern down, slightly leaning to port.
And you're jumping up and down, thinking, why?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking, I need to come back as the tide comes in and keep an eye on this. And I put my petrol-driven water pump ready and checked that both bilge pumps were working.
Right.
And I came back about 9:30, 10 o'clock-ish, and I could hear there was something wrong as soon as I got there.
Yeah.
And then I tried to get the petrol-driven water pump working, and it jammed and wouldn't go.
Did they? I mean, did anyone there come out to help? Did they themselves realise?
No, I went and asked one of the trustees who was on his boat down there.
Yeah.
He hadn't got a spare bilge pump. I couldn't raise anyone else.
So you were literally put in the deep end, literally. Yeah.
And eventually, of course, the water rose high enough to switch the electrics off, and it all shorted out, and blew the trip further up.
Oh, dear.
I then knew that it was going to sink, so I got all the tools and things that I could get hold of,
Yeah.
and pulled them all out onto the pontoon. We called the fire brigade and the Coast Guard in case they've got pumps or anything that would do the job. And they came down eventually, and they helped move all the tools to a safe location. And of course, eventually they had to say to me, look, you can't keep going down below, you can't go across the deck, it's getting dangerous. And I had to just leave everything else.
So coming into this now, you mentioned that the harbour master or somebody of that title had come along with the fire engines or from the fire and rescue and all that. So at least you have that as a written up statement. I mean, you pay your taxes for things like this, for people like this to come and aid when you need. But it's not your issue, is it? It's the people that have...
I've been in touch with both the fire brigade and the Coast Guard, and they didn't actually write up a statement about it, which really annoyed me.
But somebody would have come in and put it into a book somewhere, logged it basically.
Somebody must have logged it somewhere
and said something
about it. Get written statement.
Exactly. So.
But the first thing he said was, "Where's the metal bracelet on the end? Why isn't it secured properly?" That was the first thing he said. I did take pictures afterwards showing that the...
Well, some of those pictures we might put up. We might put up depending on various legal things, because you've had well, carry on. Carry on.
I've now got a solicitor who's agreed to do what they call a conditional fee case on this. He's got 3 approaches as to how he's going to tackle the problem where they've basically broken the law. At the moment it's a civil case. If the harbour master gets involved, it might become a criminal case, which would be...
Well, your life was at stake, wouldn't it?
Well,
ultimately,
initially, yes, it was.
yeah,
You know, and it was also my home that they flooded.
exactly.
And it contained all my paperwork, navigation computers, you name it. You know, paint, solvents,
Yeah,
materials, tools. The worst thing was that I thought, well, the air tools will be all right because they don't need, you know, the electrical circuits won't be damaged. So I left the air tools where they were.
yeah,
But in actual fact, so I suppose it was about 12 hours in the sea has actually done quite a lot of damage to them. Most of them still work, but they need a lot of renovation to be able to use them again.
well,
and of course, this second sinking, instead of going down on the port side, it's rolled over onto the starboard side.
right.
And it's rolled a lot further, and things have shot across the deck.
Right. So how many weeks? This is the second sinking. Then I mean,
yeah.
you've
the
got.
first one was the end of June, and this is the beginning of October.
But because of what happened in the first sinking of the boat, of course, your home went. I think you were alongside some friends for a few days, but the council, wherever this place is on the south coast, have actually stepped in to say, you know, there's a place for you here for a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually stayed in the homeless shelter up at Fareham for 3 nights.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, it's quite a rough time. And of course, then you've got to sort out all the finances and stuff. And I'm then moving stuff around and trying to get it out of the way. And then, even though I mean, I refloated it next morning using somebody else's spare pump.
Yeah.
Inside the boat, it's like a tsunami swept through it.
Yeah. Well,
And so most of the things in there were either needed a lot of cleaning or they were scrap. You know, most of the food and stuff was scrap. And you've got to start all over again. So you imagine you're setting up a house for the first time and moving into a strange place, or moving house even.
yeah.
And at the same time, you're trying to deal with the boatyard and the boat and clearing stuff out of the boatyard and finding alternative places to store stuff. And they didn't stop, even though I was not very well at the time. I was trying to work myself back to fitness after the accident in January. And I thought I was just about there, but then they sort of loaded more and more things on that they wanted me to do. And I had to move the engine for the boat, which weighs 2.5 tons. And it cost an arm and a leg to move that to alternative storage.
I don't know. Just cutting in a bit. That there was a time when you had. I know you don't drink personally. I mean, we might have the occasional glass of red wine, but you wouldn't go out your way to get, you know, at all. But the whole rigging area when I came alongside seemed to be so hit and miss. Certain parts of the jetty were afloat, other bits weren't, and you had an occasion where you literally fell into the water with the boat coming to, you know, pressing you against the side. And with no, well, I don't know if you had a life jacket on or something.
Oh, no, I didn't have a life jacket on. I was just going ashore to take a water canister aboard. I simply missed the pontoon in the dock. Fortunately, the tide was out, and as a result, when I ended up suspended by my elbows between the boat and the pontoon, I was up to my knees in mud. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, I went to a physio because I was suffering quite severely from muscle damage.
Yeah.
And the physio asked how I'd done it, and said, well, it's just as well the tide was out then, wasn't it? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if the tide had been in, you wouldn't have been supported by the water like you were with the mud.
Yeah.
You'd have broken both arms. And, I mean, if you break both arms, how do you get out of the water?
So I got to ask, because I know the time issue, we've got about maybe 5-6 minutes to go. I mean, this is just a quick update for us people that may want to see what's going on.
It's now in the
Is there any good news? Is there any good news? Because you've been through it since January, haven't you? This has been a horrible season for you.
It's been a pretty horrible time. I'm just getting over all the post-viral symptoms, and of course, through the last 6 months, they've been trying to sort out my blood pressure.
Yeah.
And the medicine they've been giving me for that's been upsetting my system. And at times I've not been able to do anything because the medicine's upset me so much.
Excuse me. Yeah.
And
can I ask the
they're
question?
giving me something for it at the moment, I don't think it's actually having any effect.
Right. Well, I know. I mean, that's one of those things that the doctors have to do. But have you been talking to God?
Oh yes.
Because I think we ought to mention Him, hadn't we? Because
well, I mean, the number of times
sort of testimony
I
stuff here.
either look at my Bible study or read. I've got a book called My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers.
Yeah.
And I've also got the Oswald Chambers My Utmost Devotional Bible. And I read through that most days. I must admit the last week or so I've not been well enough to read it regularly.
Do you want to share the book you're reading at the moment? Have I put you on the spot?
Enough, because I've not been very well. I've been looking at the books on the bookshelf in the lounge in the place where I'm staying.
Yeah.
And I've been reading various books. I'm reading a few of the Dick Francis novels. I can't remember the names of the books now, but one of them, I came across a bit where there was a lovely line there, and it really jumped out at me and said, well, you've got to sue them now, haven't you? And I thought, oh, pardon? Because I've been praying about, do I sue them?
Not
As a
easy.
Christian, can I sue these people?
Yeah.
And obviously, God's put His message in there. There was another bit in it. Well,
Sure.
I can't remember what that was.
I'm sure. Just.
But there's been lots of little bits that have jumped out of things that I've read. And of course, today you said, well, we'll have to do a trial run for this. And what Dick Francis book am I reading today but trial run? It's just God's sense of humour.
Yeah.
And I just, I love it because God has got a sense of humour. In the middle of a disaster, He just shows you His sense of humour.
Yeah.
And you think, right, that's fine. I know God's in this. I don't know quite how it's going to work out, but He's there. He's behind it all. No matter how bad it gets, it's all part of His plan somehow. And one of the other things that has happened is that the boat that I've got at the moment is called Astoria. And I was thinking about the nameplate because I cleaned and repainted the nameplate. It's a nice big curved wooden one, and it's actually curved in 2 directions, so it's quite a complex curved piece of wood. And as I was thinking about it one night, I just saw the letters changed. In my mind's eye, the letters were changed, and instead of Astoria, it read Alia. A-L-I-Y-A-H, which of course is the Hebrew word. When people go back to Israel, they make Aliyah. And it was, I could almost see it almost like a photograph. And I thought, goodness, what does this mean? Because when He gave me the first vision of the boat, the whole idea was to sail it around the world and end up coming back through the Gulf and up to Israel. And I would actually get off the boat in Israel and stay in Israel. The boat would come back to this country with other people in charge of it. And I would stay in Israel.
Well, that's the bit you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
You said, did I want to come along? And I said, well, let me think about it. I'm still thinking about it. But is it going to come? Is it going to be relaunched?
Well, I've got a salvage guide having a look at it at the moment. He's going to give me a quote. A for refloating the boat, which may mean doing it in stages, pumping it out and writing it, and getting some breast lines on to
Right.
and then having a look, see what damage there is down the starboard side, which we
Okay.
can't see because that's in the mud. And if we can, then refloat it. Apart from anything else, it'll put the
How many?
nose out of joint.
I would say how many people. This is well, it's a bit of a heavy-duty question, really. But how many people comfortably do you think you can take on board on the boat?
On
Comfortably,
a sea trip,
yeah.
if we're going for several days or several months, we can have at least 12 people on board.
Yeah.
And we actually need 6 of them as crew to run the boat.
Okay.
But obviously, if you're just going for a day out, you can probably get 30, 40 people on board quite comfortably.
That's what I thought. That's good.
I don't know what the because if you actually apply for a passenger license, they then come down and assess the stability of the boat and everything, and you've got to imagine all those people running across the deck and standing on one side.
Just be.
But having moved the mast, which weighs just over 2 tons,
Okay.
across the deck,
Mm-hmm.
and you could not detect the difference in the trim of the boat. I'm quite happy that 20 or 30 people on deck would not actually make the boat unstable.
No, I mean it's a very heavy boat, isn't it? It's.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I mean, she must weigh 30 odd tons. Fully laden, with the engine in, all the mast and sails, and rigging, and anchors and chains and all the rest of it.
Sure.
I would imagine she weighs about 60 ton.
That's a lot of weight, isn't it?
That's a lot of boat.
Now, just before we go, because it's coming up to just 6 o'clock. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes. I'm just going to add a little bit of a story here because dear Peter Scuthen and myself were looking at some stuff on the Nazi. What's it called now? Come on, this is Titanic. A film that came out that Goebbels, obviously in charge of propaganda, had this film made, but it was such a film of disasters. People got, I think, killed. They had mystery things happen to them, financial woes. But I mean, your situation is completely different to the Nazi Titanic. But it just seems that, with everything that's going on at the moment around the world, I mean, it's just really with what's his name, Obama, doing some really strange stuff. I mean, I still want to see the boat float. I still want to see this happen. I'm sure you do as well. And if there's an address, let me put forward our PO box address, which people can get in the website anyway, so they can contact you by letter. I think that's the best way of doing it. I'm not going to say email, but by letter. So if people want to contact you, Andy, they can contact through KCTV Media and the PO box address, which is PO box. I think it's 1122. I always get that wrong, but it's on the main site. You can see it. And really, thank you, Andy, for sticking in with it, because I know you've been really poorly, and
the most annoying thing is that I've actually got about 6 or 7 people that are interested in the boat, and I was in the middle of negotiating for another mooring, which has actually got a slipway against it. And it's actually part of the ship test facilities down at Gosport. And because I used to work for the National Physical Laboratory many years ago, and it would fit beautifully. But there we go.
Well, we've got to bring it to an end, I'm afraid, mate. And I'm sure there will be other things that God's going to be doing here. And I just hope, not from an interested point of view. I mean, this obviously been almost life and death for this guy who I've known for about 15 years. And to get a phone call from you to say, well, the boat is sinking and I need help, as you did back, you know, in the summertime, to have it then sink again the second time. I just thank you for having the guts to really to talk about it, and for us to put it on the record that the boat is not sunk completely. It's got.
We'll see what the salvage man says, but I think it should be refloatable.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Andy, thank you. Thank you for your time, mate. It's coming up to just the other side of 6 o'clock. As you know, I've got a meeting tonight. We're having a group thing, and so you look after yourself and keep us informed. And we can always put an appendage to this, either actually on the thing if we decide to put it up there for a news update kind of thing. All right.
Well,
so
if we do manage to refloat it, I'm sure I should get some pictures of me on board and show you just what a mess it is. And how much work it's going to take.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
God bless.
All right. Speak soon, mate.
Okay. Bye for now.
Thank you.